So honored to be joined today by the owner of the world famous Monster Factory, someone I often agree with on social media, but have never met before, Mr. Danny Cage. Danny, welcome to Under the Ring Pro Wrestling Conversations. How are you doing
What's
today?
up? What's up, brother? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for being here. I've been looking forward to
Absolutely.
this. Uh, so, first question: What was it like opening your school and your life up to the world on Apple TV Plus for the Monster Factory, and how did it change things for you?
Uh, man, it didn't really. It wasn't that difficult to actually open up my world to them because we were doing it for years anyway here, and we were kind of like prepping for it because in 2012, when I first took over, they were pitching us. Somebody else was pitching a reality show, so they started recording us and our training. So then from then on, I would always have cameras around and tell them like eventually this is going to happen because we would have so many people just hitting us up because we're so open with everybody. And like 2015 or 16 is when they came in and filmed like a mini documentary for us. It was just some dudes that later on went and got a production deal and everything, but like they were just some dudes like out of college looking to record some content. And I said, we're open to it. I didn't say like what's in it for me. I didn't say how much am I getting paid. We just did it, and that was 2016. It came out, and it got like Vimeo's like editor's pick, blew up, and then a couple years later, it was, hey, we want to do this. You know, let's try to pitch it to any different companies. It was Netflix, it was Hulu, it was HBO Max, and then it landed on Apple TV, and that was, I think, in part because Jeremiah Zygar got on board, and when he got on board, since he has so much clout, I think Apple was just like, let's do it.
And even just for you seeing how it was presented back once it was actually out there in the world, like, what did you think?
I loved it. I really did. And that was also part of like the agreement that we had with getting it made. I was like, I want to make sure it's not going to exploit anybody. I was like, if there's anything that really bad that I deem awful, like we got to be able to take it out. I don't want this to be something where it's just like these kids trust us to tell their stories and then we just exploit them. So I didn't want to do that. So I was so happy with everything. Plus, my mom passed away during it.
Yeah,
Right at the end before it even came out. So like they dedicated it to her. Apple sent me like this whole care package. Like it was really, they really handled it great. Everybody there, like Public Record, Vox Media, Apple, like everybody was just pros, man. It was a pleasure, man. Like I told everybody, I was like, if we could do like every year do a season, I would love to, because it was a great experience. I needed it for what I was going through. I told everybody, like, if my mom was sick and I wasn't doing this show and everything, I would have been even more of a mess. I needed to be busy. I needed to be around, and it was cool because like my mom before she passed away got to see like I was doing like really cool stuff.
yeah.
So that was kind of a good a good uh a good thing to take away, because like whenever I want to visit her, I just put on the show.
That's great. In addition to really enjoying the show itself, one thing I did really like, just as an aside, was just I love the soundtrack. I love
Yeah,
the music that they picked. I don't know
yeah.
if how much say you had in that, but hearing
I
"Take
they
Take
just
Me
I
Home" by
remember.
Phil Collins, I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
this is perfect.
Well, I remember when they hit me up, they said, "Do you have one song that you want in it?" And I was like, "Phil Collins, Take Me Home," because that's what we end every single one of our shows with. We've ended our shows with that since 2012, because it reminds me of my childhood, uh, watching Saturday Night's Main Event,
Yeah,
and that was
same.
what they would go home with. So that's what I always do at the end of the show. I'll say goodbye to all the crowd, and I go play the music, nerd, and they play Phil Collins, Take Me Home, and it's a perfect moment for me. It just boom, like that ends the night.
Fantastic. Now I really have to get to a Monster Factory show because I need to see this in
Yeah,
person
dude.
now myself
Yeah.
too.
Yep.
But it's coming. But how accurate was the show to what was going on?
There was nothing staged. Nothing. Like I told them that was the agreement. Now there were some things like the audio didn't pick up, so I had to repeat it. Like like for example, like when I'm yelling into the camera, like stop the music, we had to retake that but I honestly did yell it like that and scream it like that. They just didn't get it on camera. So
Mhm.
that's why they had the audio of it. They just didn't have my face doing it. So we just reshot that. But everything you see happens. And there was nothing like, hey, we need you to do this. We need you to do that. It was like sorry about that with the camera, guys.
Yeah, no
I'm
problem.
holding it up because I'm upstairs in my bedroom right now. I don't have a desk up here. So like when we did the show, like we would walk in and it would be like, this is what we're doing today. Like one day, like the day where I flipped out and left, they had no clue I was doing that. I walked in and they're like, what's on the agenda today? I was like, well, I'm leaving soon. And they're like, what? And I go, you'll see. And I just told them, I cut the promo on the students, took my mic pack off, put it on the table and drove off. No one contacted me. Nobody did anything. Uh, because they knew like I was going through some stuff and I was losing my stuff on them. And like the biggest thing I get angry at is I never get angry like directly with the students. I get angry because of myself, because I feel like if the students aren't getting it, it's my fault. And that's why, like I said, like you guys got to figure out your why. Like, because I have here a TV show's filming. We have all these eyes on us, all this stuff, and you're still only getting in 1 to 2 days. It was so disheartening because I would tell people like for months leading up, like this is going to be it. I'm going to tell you, just hunker down and just give this 100% so you have no regrets afterwards. If you got to take vacation time, take it. It'll be worth it. It's, blah, blah, blah. Just do it. And there would still be people that would miss training and miss opportunities and miss shows just because.
Yeah.
And, that's what wasted potential is what really fires me up, because I can literally see like when I look at someone like what they're capable of and how great they could be, and then like they don't, and that's like, all right, I'm your coach, I got to get it out of you. So like when I was cutting the promo on them and crying and stuff, it was pretty much like disappointment with me, like how come you couldn't get this through to them, you know?
Interesting. I was going to ask too. That was actually pretty much next on my list, was just how hard it is to coach wrestlers when literally every one of them is on a completely different path.
Yeah, that's how I changed my whole training style. When I first started in 2011 and 12 and all, it was so old school. It was like I was brought up in the 90s, and I was broken in. And then, as I slowly went down and slowly opened myself up to new techniques and new everything, I would pick up stuff from my amateur wrestling days. I'd pick stuff up from different coaches just in the world. I would never just watch wrestling. I didn't care about, because I always say this, the world of wrestling never had a shortage of good wrestlers. It just had a shortage of good people that can also wrestle. So that's what I try to instill in our people is like, hey, the wrestling part is last. I need you a good person. I need you to show up on time. And I can tell who's going to be a good person because, like, we do things like with kids' birthday parties. We do charity events, charity work. We do tours with people. We have special needs people in all the time. And I see the people that avoid that. And I'm like, you're never going to make it. You don't understand what wrestling's about. It's about the creating the memories. And like, we get to wrestle and that's the bonus. But like, all this other stuff is the important stuff. The appearances, the getting to know people, and again, creating the memories, being somebody, a spokesman for a company. They just think, hey, the company just wants me to wrestle. No, man, they want you to do a lot more, but these kids don't get it. And what's sad is other schools don't teach that and promotions don't teach that. So they look at me like I'm the weird one, but I'm actually the one preparing themselves for the future. And the other people are just preparing themselves for a future wrestling when it's a lot more than that, man. It's a lot more than that.
And then even if you look at the industry nowadays, like somebody said this to me not long ago, like every company has great wrestlers. Like that's not going to be the thing that makes you
Yeah.
stand out nowadays. It's like you can find great wrestling on every show.
Yeah.
It's how do
Great
you get
finding a
noticed?
great wrestler. That's why I always tell people like anybody can wrestle. Anybody, like I am not a trainer. I don't like the word trainer. I like coach because trainer just means I'm just teaching them a routine. When a coach actually just teaches you things and the ability to find your own answers. And that's what the key to my training is. I was telling the students the other day, I was like, do you ever see me get in the ring and do anything with you guys? Every once in a while I will. And they're like, no. I was like, and you guys probably can't tell me, or if someone asked you, like, hey, what did Dan teach you? You wouldn't say a move, you wouldn't say hold, you would say to show up on time, to be a good person, to make sure I help, to make sure I leave it better That's what's missing. Like all the wrestling stuff, like I just basically pound the crap out of the fundamentals, the basics, the foundation. And then once you get so good at that, you can't get it wrong. Then what you are doing now is you're learning your own stuff because you already have the foundation. I tell everybody we learn to drive 10 and 2, right? 10 and 2.
Right.
We don't learn to drive like this with our hand like this. 10 and 2. That's because that's the basic foundation of driving. And if you teach everybody to do it this way, that might not be comfortable for that person. You do it with the other hand, might not be comfortable for that person. You do it with the two hands, you pass the test, you get the foundations down, then you can drive any way you want. You can tilt your seat back, put on your music, do whatever. But that's not until you get comfortable. A lot of these wrestling schools are teaching people to drive like this and drive like that. And then someone says, hey, we need you to do this. And like, I never learned that way because they never got the basic foundation. Once you get the basic foundation, then you can learn anything.
Yeah, it's the basics and the details. It seems like is what you're getting them.
Yep.
Where you're
Like
getting
I
them
can't
to.
do so many things. Like I was trying to show the students how to get up wrong and to lock up wrong. I can't. I don't know how to do it. Like it's out of my DNA. I can't anymore. And that's why I tell them repetition breeds habit. You know, we always do the reps over and over again. Even our warm-ups are like 45 minutes and they're the same warm-ups over and over again. And that's basically, I designed it that way because it's almost like symbolic of wrestling because you're going to do a lot of things before you earn the right to get in that ring. So our warm-ups are 45 minutes just to get in the ring. And that day you might not even get in the ring, but at least you're going through that stuff and you're getting that repetition and you're getting that muscle memory and all that stuff. It's such a simple formula, but like there's only been one coach who's ever asked me like really for advice on running a school, and he's probably one of the best coaches in the world, and that's Dr. Tom Pritchard. No one else has ever asked me any advice on running a school ever, just Dr. Tom. And that was right when he started with Glenn. He called me up and he's like, so wrestling schools. He's like, I've done them for this and that, but I need to, so I told him how I do my things and my philosophy, and he throughout the years, he's, text me and we'll talk and stuff like that. But like, it's funny. Like I have the most successful wrestling school in the world, best success rate, most students trained, most consistent, no cancelable things, no seedy stuff going on, but nobody wants to hire me. Nobody wants me to be there. Nobody wants me. So why is that? That's what I look at. And then, you see all this stuff going on. And then I'm like, well, maybe that's why, because I'm not an awful person. Maybe it's because they know I'll say something if I see something. So that's like the disheartening thing is like, I do everything correct. Like I live my life like this. And I tell my students, I have a really troubled past. I did a lot of bad things, not like awful things, but like I was a bully growing up because I was going through stuff at home. Then I figured that out. Then I would go out and, we would break things, get in fights, bar fights, all this stuff. And like I did all these things. And I'm just like, now I'm focused on living my life. I'm very disciplined writer. So if I live my life like I'm the hero in my story, no matter what I get put in front of me, I go, okay, how would the hero in my story handle this? And guess what? If I screw it up, then I go, okay, how would the hero handle the screw up in a story? He would apologize. He would try to make it right. The hero in a story always thinks of other people, not themselves. That's the way I live my life. It sucks and all, but like the way I look at it is the amount of people I've helped throughout the years. Like there's people that aren't on TV, but like I saved their lives. It's different people I saved from committing suicide. It's different people that were going to quit wrestling. And I reached out to them even after they blocked me on social media. They talked trash about me. I had another coach reach out to them. Then they came back and then they got hired, but when they thank people, they don't thank me. But that's the thankless job. But it's kind of like I tell my kids is I didn't really appreciate my mom until way later on in life.
Right.
So like the job of me isn't to get recognition really. My job of me is to take care of my kids. And if 50 out of 51 appreciate me, down the road, cool. That one isn't going to kill it for me.
Yeah. Personally, I'll just look forward to your overnight sensation
Yeah.
once you do get the job in a few
Oh
years, and
yeah.
then we'll look back at this and be like, "Oh, remember that?" You know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
honestly, though, too, seeing the way that you run things on Monster Factory, seeing the respect that you have within wrestling from the outside looking in, does mean something too. And
Thank you.
I think that regardless of whether or not there's contracts and whether or not there's individual opportunities. I don't think that is the ultimate reflection of
Yeah.
a
I mean,
man.
but like it is disheartening now
Yeah.
because like
Oh, absolutely.
it's just like if you have like if this was the NFL and you know there was a coach shortage and there was a shortage of stars and there was a guy that's like in college that makes these stars, you'd be like, hey, let's get him here, imagine what he can
Yeah.
do here. But they're just like, no, we can't because he's not from our system. Yeah, that's why I'm good. I'm really good because I think outside of your system.
Yeah.
All the answers aren't in your system. Same way I look for answers outside my system all the time. And people bring stuff up. I'm like, that's a great idea. Let's implement that. Let's do that. I'm open to everything. And that's why I'm successful again.
What was it like on your first day training at the Monster Factory, and what was it like meeting and getting to know Pretty Boy Larry Sharpe?
Uh wow, man. Memories. So I remember my tryout. First off, my tryout was everything I thought it would be. Because and then when I look back, I'm just like, wow, that was pretty intense because it was 1994. I was in amazing shape. I was probably 200 pounds, but I was like solid ripped 200 pounds. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't doing anything. I was just wrestling and wrestling and wrestling. And that's it. And I did my tryout, and I remember going there. It was at the Route 30 Marketplace in Clementon. And I went in there and I first walked into the weight room because I saw these big dudes going into this gym. So I had my wrestling shoes over my shoulder and I just walked in and they're like, "You're here for wrestling?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "It's down there." So I go down there and it's this huge, man, I could still smell it. It was at a flea market. So
Hmm.
like it's that smell of like all these different foods and then like cigar smoke and all that. And I just remember walking into the Monster Factory and there was some bleachers set up with some kids and then the ring there, and Larry got me in the ring and I just remember the tryouts before me and they were horrible. They couldn't really do anything, but I got in the ring and they had me do the tryout, and like Glenn and Chaz were my guys putting me through the tryout. They were just Glenn and Chaz then. They haven't been the headbangers. I
Oh
think they did
wow.
maybe a couple job enhancement matches for WWE, but it was just Chaz and Glenn. They put me through my tryout and I just remember, and for coaches out there, this is how decent I was because like preparing to be a wrestler, like from age 10 till I got that tryout, every day of my life was pro wrestling. I was shadow wrestling. I was learning to stand up just from watching TV. I would put it in slow motion and figure out how to get up the proper way, what body part to work, and all the different reversals because I was also an amateur wrestler. So a lot of it was uh, in the amateur world, like
Right.
switches, reversals, stuff like that. So I just remember doing the tryout. And then when we ran the ropes, and again, this is where the other coaches will be like, wow, that happened. So I started to run the ropes, and he's just like, pick up speed, hit it more intense. And I'm hitting the speed. And then he just tells Glenn or Chaz or whoever, just like drop down. So now I'm dropping down. They're doing drop downs on me, and I'm hitting the ropes and going over them. Then he told them crisscross. Now they're crisscrossing me as we're running the ropes. Uh, this was my first day ever in a ring.
Wow.
So we get to the outside and he goes, "When do you want to start?" And I'm just like, "Oh, he probably takes everybody." So I'm like, "I'll start tomorrow." And that's when, my dad, the whole story with my
Yeah.
dad.
Right.
But anyway, little did I know that like he didn't take everybody because like Stevie Richards tried out, he turned him down. Some other wrestlers tried out, he turned them down. Like he wouldn't, he just, so anyway, I didn't do it. I came back and I just remember when I first came back, he's like, "Yeah, you said you did a tryout in what, 94, whatever. I assume you're fine. Yeah, just start." So we start doing lockups and everything. And like, I'm on like this, my lockups, everything. And then I start reversing hammer locks and all that stuff. And him and the other trainer are like, "Where'd you train first?" And I go, "I didn't." They're bullshit or forget. Sorry, dude. He's like, no way. And I'm like, no, I didn't. So, but they were convinced that I trained somewhere else and I was a spy from another wrestling school. Yeah. And then other students hated me because like I was there for like 3 weeks and I'm, doing matches in the ring. I'm getting put through matches with this one guy. I don't know. I don't remember what happened to him, but I just remember he was Mike Murray. He was like a 6'5" dude from LA. Decent leader, so he would like just see me in the ring and be like, you want to go? And I'm like, sure. And I would just get in there and get the reps, and I didn't care if I sucked or I was awful. But looking back, like I was really good. Like I was. My first match was like 4 or 5 minute match, and there was nothing missed, nothing bad with it, and stuff like that. Like, and then like then just injuries hit. But like training at the Monster Factory was nothing like it is right now. We had summers off because one of the coaches, after Larry got cancer, he took over and he would go to Canada. So we didn't train during the summer. We barely ran shows. And if we did, we didn't even know about them until like a couple weeks or whatever. We didn't promote anything. Of course, we had no social media because there's none to be even around. But like sometimes like we tell the story, me and Cliff sometimes would show up, and me and Cliff Compton, and there would be nobody at the building. And then next thing you know, there's a U-Haul truck, and like, yeah, we're moving buildings. So we'd come in there and just move the building, and then we would be done for the day. And other times we'd show up and there would be nobody. Like I told the students sometimes I would show up to train, it would be just me because they had no accountability. They didn't care if you showed up or not. It was just whatever. But I just remembered like I made up drills by myself, striking drills along the ropes, practicing springboards and different things like that. So like we had no structure. It was you got in the ring, you learned a couple moves, you were there 6 to 8, and that was it. Bye. And it was a couple days a week. There was no weekends, and then every once in a while we'd have birthday parties. But it was nothing like this. Nothing. And I implemented this because this is what I dreamed of a wrestling school should be like, because I used to do amateur wrestling camps and I would do different athletic camps and stuff. And I was like, none of this is in here. This is athletic stuff we're doing. We got to implement that. And I just remember when I first started doing it, Larry didn't want me to put anything public. He's like, don't put anything public. You got to protect the business. I'm like, Larry, it's mine now. I was like, trust me. You're someone who has no room to talk about protecting the business. You opened a wrestling school when it was not done. And then he saw what I was doing, and he's like really started to dig it. He started doing his own videos. We even did a how-to thing on wrestling. If you look up like how to do a headlock, how to do a this and that, it's Larry and Steve Macklin and this guy Mike Spanos. I was supposed to do it. I told Larry I was sick because I wanted Larry to do it because he was in his head about things and thinking he'd have it and all that. So I think it was good for him, even though he cursed me and hated that he had to do it. But he loved it. I know he did. And it's always going to be there. But yeah, it was not like it is here.
Yeah.
Nothing. It was basically probably like a 50 by 50 brick building later on with just a ring, no heating, no air conditioning. And that was it.
Yeah, because first time I would have heard about it was seeing the promo shots when I was a kid of Bam Bam Bigelow and Larry Sharpe and all the magazines.
That was in Mount Holly.
Mm-hmm.
That was in Mount Holly at an airport hangar. The Monster Factory has gone from Mount Holly to Paulsboro again, to Westville, to Mantua, to Deptford, to Belmar, to Gloucester City, to Paulsboro.
Wow.
Yeah, and then what Larry would do is, I always tell this story. It's pretty amazing, but it's so like Larry. I love it. After the Clementon place closed, which was the best Monster Factory in my opinion, that was awesome. Other than this one's the best no matter what. But like prior to me, it closed, and what he would do is he would try to get a building. Well, he was having trouble finding buildings, so what he would do is find buildings that had been up for rent for a while. He'd approach them and go, hey, how long has it been since you've had this building rented out? And they're like, oh, a year or two. And he goes, well, you're paying insurance for it, right? And they're like, yeah. He goes, well, how about I pay your insurance for it? You let me rent the building, and when someone wants to rent it out, I'll leave. So they're like, okay. So that's what he would do. So that's why sometimes when me and Cliff would pull up, we would be moving.
We have to go somewhere else.
Yep. So like sometimes like there would be no pictures hanging on the wall, no nothing, because we were only there for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, then to another place. But it was a
Crazy.
smart business decision
Yeah.
because the tryouts were drying up. Other people were open wrestling schools, so Larry saw it as, hey, no need to send $3,000, $2,000 on rent when I could pay $300 for fire insurance.
Right, right.
You
It's pretty
know,
wild to me too, just seeing all like some of the posters that you have and stuff. It's wild that the school is so started in association with Nature Boy Buddy Rogers to me
yeah,
too.
it started with Buddy Rogers wanted Larry Sharpe to train his son. That's it.
And
And
his son
because
was
that's why
David. Was that his?
that's why I laugh, because I think it was either Bruce Pritchard or someone said something, and again, I'm not afraid to mention names. I think it was Bruce Pritchard or somebody said something like making fun of, like, yeah, and I think Kevin Von Erich was fine with the training. Look who his dad was. And I'm like, yeah, well, Buddy Rogers was the other kid's dad, and he wanted Larry to train him. Like, so there's some credence to that. Plus, he wanted Larry to put him through a match for his dad and for everybody else. And then Larry wound up getting his collarbone broken during it. But I never put Kevin on the poster just because, it was just like I wasn't going to deal with every time going, Kevin Von Erich, what's he up there for? But I'm like, yeah, Larry did legitimately help him and train him.
That's
Um,
wild.
yeah.
I wish I
And
would
then,
have known that before this today, because actually just before this interview today, I was interviewing Kevin Von Erich
oh, yeah.
an
And then,
hour ago.
well, what's funny is I became friends with him because of it. I wound up messaging him probably like 2012 or so about and telling him the stories, and that I was, I took over the Monster Factory with Larry, and he was loving it. And then like he actually called Larry for his birthday. Like he arranged, I was sitting right there as they were like talking about it, and Larry talking about his collarbone. He's like, it still bothers me only when it's cold and this and that. But it
Wow.
was like one of those cool stories. But like Larry said, like when Buddy said that to him, like, I want you to train my son, he goes, Dan, I'm not a mark for anybody. He goes, I'm a mark for Buddy Rogers. And and when he said that, he goes, I was so prideful. And he goes, it would be like Babe Ruth coming up to you and be like, can you teach my son how to hit?
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I can see
Yeah.
that.
So like, and Larry's training methods and me are very similar, that like our nature of like, we watch what you do, and then we let you do it. We let you fail, and then we tweak here and there, and we figure out things. I try to tell my students, when I'm yelling at you, I'm not yelling at you. I'm yelling at myself, because that's also what Larry would do a lot. Like Larry would like yell, like, slow down, slow down. But he was really yelling at himself because his students don't understand to not go so fast. You know what I mean? So like, that's like, whenever you hear stories about me yelling or screaming, I'll always say at the end, I'm not yelling at you. I'm yelling at me because you should know better. And it's my job to get you to know better, not yelling at you.
And
The
did
only
Larry?
time you'll ever hear me really yell at students if they do something unsafe. That's it.
Yep. And you saw that
Oh yeah.
on the show too, with the suplex outside the ring.
Yeah.
Did Larry also have the amateur background?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, dude.
That's
Let
what
me
I
tell you the
thought I
story of
remembered.
this. All right. So here's the story with this. His only loss, I think, was to King Kong Bundy in high school.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then he later trained King Kong Bundy.
Exactly.
But here's the whole story about the Monster Factory, Larry, how he got in. This is such an interesting story. So when Larry was like 10 years old, he is at a match, and Red Berry's there. And his dad and him go out, and they see him at a diner. Larry goes up to Red Berry at the diner and goes, I want to be a pro wrestler. This is not made up. This is true. He goes, get some amateur experience, start wrestling. We'll be in touch. It's Larry's senior year in high school. Into the Paulsboro High School gym walks Gorilla Monsoon and Red Berry. They say, go to college, get some more experience. We'll be in touch. And they start sending letters. Him and Red Berry are sending letters back and forth about his progress and all this. So Larry winds up finishing college. I think he was undefeated. I think he went to Gloucester County College, or if maybe his only loss was to Bundy. Maybe it was that. I don't know. But anyway, he contacts Red Berry. He says to come on out. Larry, a couple months later, goes out, goes to his house, and they're like, he passed away. Like that, you know what I mean? Like, people don't understand that now, but like, this was the 70s, Yeah. But he passed away, and Larry didn't know it. So they got him in touch with Gorilla Monsoon. Gorilla Monsoon started breaking him in, and then handed him off to Mr. Fuji, and Mr. Fuji was his first trainer. And then when Fuji finished training him, he gave Larry his robe, which is like a 24 karat gold silk robe, amazing Japanese robe. And then when Larry left wrestling completely in 2014 and was done, he gave me that robe, and I cried like a baby. And he goes, "It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal." And then like I saw him tear up too. So like, yeah, it was a big deal. And yeah, that's the story. Like, yeah, Larry was a badass amateur. He even beat the shit out of Dynamite Kid one time in Japan. Because Dynamite Kid thought Larry was coming on to him when Larry was just like, they were all talking in the I'm sorry for cursing. They
You're
were all
doing
talking.
well.
Yeah, what's that?
You're doing well.
Thank you. They were hanging out at a bar just in Japan, and Larry was finishing up, and they were talking and bullcrapping, and then Larry said to him, "Hey, you want to just grab a 6-pack and we'll go up to your room and finish bullcrapping and all this?" And Dynamite's like, "What are you?" And Larry's like, "What?" He's like, "No, I just gonna have a beer." And then like Dynamite charges him, and Larry just throws him again, and then that was it. Like, same with like Matt Bourne and Larry. Larry Sharpe's dad and Matt Bourne's dad were it's like an 80s movie, like when you see like the dads letting the kids fight, and even though the kids aren't really kids anymore, they're like in their 20s. So like Larry's dad, Augie, and Matt Bourne's dad were on a bus traveling with Larry and Matt, and they were saying whose son was better at wrestling, and they got off the bus and like Larry beat him. And then like they go back and they're like, I think like at Larry's house and all hanging out, and then they're wrestling in the kitchen again. But like it was all amateur wrestling all the time. Yeah, Larry, that's why me and Larry got along so great, is like we would talk about amateur wrestling, we would talk about the tournaments I used to do and stuff like that. And like he brought up Dan Gable one time, and then he brought up I forget who else. I forget who it was. Anyway, some amateur wrestler, and I was the only one who knew who it was. And and Larry was just like, "What the heck is going on with wrestling? That wrestlers don't know wrestlers." But yeah, Larry was a big amateur wrestler. He was from Paulsboro, and he's up on the wall in the building we're at. It shows him class of '69, and he's a senior there in there, Larry Weil.
Yeah, I love learning different things about some of those wrestlers from the past, and in this case, just knowing the whole story of your Monster Factory. And he's such a huge part of it. And I only knew like 2% of anything you just said. So it's fantastic.
Here's the thing: like when there's so many people like, "Oh, you only got the show because of Larry," like they didn't even know who Larry was. Like they weren't even going to include him. So that's why I built a whole section. I was like, if they're not going to include him, then I'm going to build a whole wall with nothing but Larry on it. So in the background, he's always going to be in the TV show. Yeah. And you can really see it when I'm getting out of the ring and I go, "Oh, my back's sore. You're making me angry. You're stressing me out." You can see like that's a whole Larry thing. Well, one day we were just talking, and I'm going to get choked up talking about it, but I was just like, we weren't filming anything. And they were just like, had the camera rolling, but we weren't filming a scene. And I was looking up and I was like, "Man, he should be here." And I just started crying uncontrollably. And that's when I think like they contacted me. They're like, "Hey, we're going to put some Larry stuff in it." So like we filmed it first, like the whole history of the Monster Factory at Rowan College. They did it like a college course. Like I talked about Buddy Rogers. I talked about Larry. Nice. They had like they bought in a train tracks, for the camera to come in. That was the only day I wasn't on edibles, because that was a day where I had to read lines. That was a day where it was going to be like me orchestrated reading lines.
Right.
Kind of like when I talk about this is a promo, this is a heel, this is a baby face. That of course is not real. That was
pre-produced. Yeah.
Right. But like everything else was legit. But like, yeah, that was it. And then they started pulling old clips of Larry, so we got that in there. But like there were so many people who were hitting me up like hating on me, like sending anonymous stuff being like, this is all because of Larry, not because you didn't do any of this. And I'm like, okay. I wasn't going to go out in the public and be like, "No, they wanted." I'm like, okay, I let you have that. Sure.
Yeah. We're going to move on to something we call the 3 count. It's going to be 3 quick questions and your answers. So first one, aside from Monster Factory, was there a particularly good documentary or reality show you felt portrayed wrestling training accurately, or one that you liked?
I don't like. I didn't. I liked the Netflix one for the case of that it was wrestling on streaming. I wouldn't have done things they did, but that's their product. I respect it. It's fine. I just wouldn't have done it. My favorite wrestling documentary of all time isn't a training one. I love Wrestling with Shadows. I think
Hmm.
that is the most well done uh, documentary. I don't like things that exploit wrestling and the bad stuff because there's so much good, but it's just so easy to sell the bad that I don't like it. I didn't like Beyond the Mat. I hated it. I thought it was awful for wrestling, and everybody who like loves it, I don't understand. It would be like, hey, this car crash is great. It'll promote people to drive. No, it won't. It'll terrify people. Um, like I didn't like that. So I can only think of ours as like
Yeah.
a really positive documentary about the training. And it's also my fault too, because I don't seek out stuff. People always think my whole life is wrestling and stuff. I'll watch wrestling that's on TV because it's a product, the current stuff. But like I study more film. I read a lot. I read too much. And I do a lot on my phone with reading. Uh, to the point like where I should just get the app to read on my phone so I don't have to have the actual books, but I just like books. Um, and I'll just create stuff. Like I'll literally screenwrite. I'll write a script,
Nice.
never do anything with it and just throw it out. I'll just write it, read it, reamp it, and then like I hate it and delete it, or I'll throw it out. Like that's what I just create stuff to create stuff. I love it. I don't think you need an audience for everything. Sometimes it's just like a creative outlet, and
Yep.
then sometimes you do something you're like, oh, I want to share that, and that's kind of like how you find your art. And that's what I kind of do with our students. The way I do things is just get in and get around. You don't always have to talk wrestling, but be creative, do something in this genre, get out there, be around the arts. Like I tell everybody who's wanting to be a wrestler, go do theater. Go get famous somewhere else before you wrestle.
Yeah.
Like honestly, if I was a TV star and this successful in wrestling, they'd hire me as a coach. But because I'm just a really good coach, they won't hire me. Like our wrestlers are just as good as Logan Paul and all that stuff, but he has the clout, he has this, he has that. So it's almost like making my job a little harder, but at the same time, it's now the game has changed. Now you got to step up. Now you have to be, have all these different tools in your pocket to make it so like there's a reason they go to colleges and go to other places to recruit students is because they see how passionate they are for one thing, and all they do is tilt it towards
Yep.
pro wrestling. Um, because like when I get athletes, it's much easier to train them. But at the same time, when they're bullheaded, they're bullheaded. They're stuck in their ways. They don't understand because like wrestling's wrestling, it's athletic, but it's also theater. And if these athletes never did theater, they're not going to understand that direction. They're not going to understand that. And as I'm thinking of that, like I think one of the best guys I've seen right now, and I would honestly love to see this guy win the Royal Rumble, is Braun Breaker. I think his acting is amazing. His character portrayal, he can go from the angry guy to the goofy guy. He's showing that range right now. Like I wouldn't even wait. I would strap him up. He's been thrown in the deep end.
Yeah.
Like, and I know like they talk about where he's trained and all, but like QT and them trained him first. A lot of
Interesting.
people, QT at the Nightmare Factory was training him first. Like the dude knows his stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's impressive, man. It's really impressive. Like I was watching him and like his wrestling is impressive, but like in my mind, I go anybody can do that stuff.
You're watching for the other stuff.
Yeah, I need to see the character stuff. I need to see the timing stuff. I need to see him not panic over stuff. Like just little things, man. Like I saw him just change his movement when someone was about to do something over the top rope. He took the one hand to make sure his opponent was safe. Took the other hand to go ahead and hold onto the turnbuckle underneath until they were both set, and then put both hands up. When most people put both hands up, and like that's the stuff I noticed that
Yeah.
sticks out to me. I can spot so many things just by watching. That's why, like, whenever I coach or do seminars, I just tell everybody to get in the ring and we start doing stuff, because I could have a curriculum laid out, but if they ain't ready to eat off that plate, they're getting
Right.
nothing out of it.
Yeah.
So I like to go and just observe and see what I have to fix. It's, kind of like when I did the Future of Honor thing, the Ring of Honor dojo stuff. I went there and observed for a couple of weeks before I did anything, because how can I come in here and say I'm going to fix this place if I don't know what's
You
wrong
don't
with
know
it?
exactly. Yeah.
But like
Uh,
they didn't understand any of that because, they're children. All right.
second question. We've had him on the show before, and this is one of the times Monster Factory came up on this show. But the man known as Damian Priest walks in. What did you think the first time you saw him, and what are your feelings on how he has grown as a performer and as a
Well,
person?
well, here's the thing. I was a wrestler when he first walked in.
Wow.
We were wrestling together. We were training together back in, 2002, 3, 4, whatever. And it was, you can find a match. It's me and QT Marshall versus Nasty Nick and Damian Priest.
I did find that match when I was researching for this, actually.
Yep. Yep. And that was when we were training together. I had years over those guys. That was, I think that was QT's like maybe third or fourth match ever, maybe,
Wow.
and his first tag team match ever. And I just went out there and had fun. That's all I did because I was working for the phone company then. My wife is in the crowd. She's the one screaming as loud as everybody else. At the time, she was just my girlfriend. But yeah. And then I, left wrestling in 2004 or 5, and I didn't see him again until 2010. Me, QT, and Luis just picked up like, it was nothing. And, I told QT and Luis, I wanted them to be coaches. And, it was one of those things where Damian Priest I saw so much potential in him, but like he couldn't get out of his own way, meaning like people in his head, like he'll tell you, everybody in his head was like, oh, you're a star. You do this, you do that. And I'm like, no, you're not. I was like, no, you don't look like a star, dude. You're a big dude, but you just, no. And then like, I kind of like called him out during like a Gerald Briscoe seminar. And then Gerald Briscoe and me got in his head. And then like, it was just like, that switch was like, I'm never going to be embarrassed again. I'm never going to feel bad about myself again. And that dude, like we would have warm-ups at 7. He would go and do warm-ups at 7. And we'd tell other people like, hey, if you want to join him, go. So you'd see a couple people join him. And then he started doing warm-ups at 6. So he was going to outwork everybody. And the weight just started coming off him and he just started killing it. Then he got in with Ring of Honor and he kept doing their camps over and over again. He probably did like 6 or 7 camps before they signed him.
Wow.
Now, in the meantime, everybody else, a couple people had done 1 camp and they were signed.
Yeah.
There's people that like aren't in wrestling right now that were signed with 1 camp. And then here's Damian Priest having to do 7 camps to get signed to Ring of Honor. And then he got his tryout. They turned him down. I remember I got invited to the PC in 2014, not to coach. They were just going to give me a tour because they said they don't take coaches in, even though they take coaches in, but they didn't want me in. So anyway, I get the tour, and Canyon goes, what do you want to talk about? I don't want to talk about anything. I don't want to see anything. Or he goes, what do you want to see? I go, I don't want to see anything. I want to talk business. I want to talk like my students and why, I want to get communication because like you tell them what to work on, but I'm their coach. Why not tell me and I can help them? And then I was talking about Macklin and he goes, well, he's great, but I just need someone 6'5" and Latino. And I said, I gave you that and you screwed it up. And he goes, what are you talking about? I was like, Punishment Martinez. And he goes, what do you mean? And he goes, he must be unimpressive. So I like show him a picture of him at Ring of Honor, like flexing. He just goes, send me his stuff. And I just remember leaving. He's like, he texts me. He's like, no, I mean, like right now, send me it. So I sent his stuff and they're just like, oh, I remember we were looking for somebody Mexican and not so old. Okay, well, 4 years later, he's not Mexican. He's 4 years older and they paid him more money.
Yeah. And now he's one of the top stars of their company.
but I say this, and I can say this because I think it's true. If he was picked up in 2014, I don't think he's with the company right now. I think that's why I always say where we're at is where we're supposed to be.
Timing, yeah.
Did they miss the boat? Did they not see what I saw? Of course they didn't see what I saw because I'm closer to it than them. They just saw it as like an outsider. But But once he got there, they're like, yeah, he is really good. You know, they saw what I saw. They saw like he's a good coach, he's a good leader, he's a good person, and he's got the right mentality. Same with QT. Like we don't bullcrap. Me, QT, and Luis, like we feed off of each other, and like they do their thing, I do my thing. Like we barely talk now. I'll maybe text them here and there, but like when we were together, like we would be at coaching and training, and we'd feed off of each other, and we'd be there till 2, 3 in the morning talking wrestling, and that's all it was. But then again, like I said, they went there. I'm like, cool, I'm here. Like we're good. Like this is the way it's supposed to be. You did your thing. I wanted you out of here to go live your dreams. Like I didn't want to be a wrestler. I want to always be a coach. Like as soon as I got injured, I was like, I'm 50 now. I can't wrestle. Like this is it. Like, but they're where they're supposed to be, man. And I'm just so happy for QT. Like number one, he's doing what we always said for him to do, which was apply himself, and he's killing it, man. But like I say this, coaches can coach you, you know, the whole lead a water or a horse to water and all. I equate it to like swimming pools. How often do you go to a swimming pool, you see everyone having a good time, and there's just someone that just won't get in? And you try to sell them on it. No, come on, you just got to get used to it. No, you just got to get used to it. No, go get hot and get sweaty. Come on and get in. It's awesome. No matter what you do, you're not going to get them in until they're ready to get in. And it took them finding themselves. Like I found myself once our show wasn't picked up for season 2. That's when I reevaluated everything. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to do this. I'm not worried about what happens next. I'm just doing this because from 2018 to 2023, I was in a holding pattern with this TV show.
Right.
There's so many different projects and stuff I didn't do because I was afraid it was going to screw up this project. And this project wasn't just my project. It was going to feature the students. So it was like, I got to be extra careful for these kids. To the point, like I was like even asking Apple, I was like, do you want me not to do my social media the way I do it and say these things? And they're just like, no, we don't care about that. You're fine. Like we're on board with probably 99.9% of the things you say. I was like, all right, cool. But it was great. It was great.
So last 3-count question, kind of lighter. Aside from Danny Cage, who was your favorite wrestling cage?
Christian.
Yeah.
I love Christian, man.
Who had the name first, you or him?
Me. I was well, I don't know. I was whenever Cage Snake Eyes came out, that's when I became Danny Cage, because I wanted to be Danny Mac. That's what my bookie called me. I was Danny Mac because my last name is McDonald.
Right.
And they're like, no, you can't be that. And I was like, whatever. So I'm driving to the show and I look up and I see in neon green Cage, and then underneath Snake Eyes. And I was like, Danny Snake Eyes? No, Danny Cage. And I just thought it was cool because like my favorite color is green. Like it reminded me like of the, you know, the neon green from like Poison, which was one of my favorite bands. And I just was like, that's badass. I was like, yeah, Danny Cage. And that's it. You know, that's and everybody would say like Johnny Cage. I was like, no, that wasn't the inspiration. I was like, no, I just thought a last name Cage would be cool.
Man, that's
my
great.
my dream like name when I was growing up, I loved Sting. So I loved lightning bolts. So I wanted to be Bolt, you know, Sting and then Bolt. And then I was going to have a tag team partner, Thunder. And we were going to be Thunderbolt. And I'm still friends with this guy. He still comes to my shows every once in a while. James, what's up, brother? If you're there. But yeah, this was like in 6th and 7th grade. That was our tag team. We were Thunder and Bolt. And then like I remember when Thunder and Lightning came out at WCW, I'm like, oh my God, we can't now.
It's over.
Yeah. Oh no.
That's awesome. Well, Danny Cage, I'm so glad we were able to do this today. Congratulations on all that you have accomplished with the Monster Factory and the show, and just the talent that you're putting out there, both on your own shows and all into the major companies. It is seen. And, you know, I know you got a bunch of stuff at the Monster Factory WrestleMania weekend, too, that people can check out, that we can link to also. But I'm so happy that we were able to connect and do this today. And I wish you all the best with everything you're doing.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much, man. And yeah, like hit up the website. You can find out information on WrestleMania week because it's for the fans and the boys and the promoters. Let's go.
All right. Thank you.